But for once in this season of craziness, we have some good news for you tonight. And here it is. 212 years to the day after Abraham Lincoln was born, the Democratic Party propaganda outlet that stole his name has finally collapsed. Lincoln's birthday present? The end of the Lincoln Project. We can all celebrate that. There's probably never been an organization sleazier or more vicious in American politics than the Lincoln Project. Naturally, it was funded heavily by the tech oligarchs in Silicon Valley. The Lincoln Project set itself apart from most political organizations by never even addressing, for the most part, ideas or policies. Instead, they went personal, always, immediately, right for the throat. Rather than argue against what Donald Trump might be doing or not doing, the Lincoln Project instead threatened his attorneys and then spread filth about his aides. In January, for example, one Lincoln Project executive bragged that, quote, "We are constructing a database of Trump officials and staff that will detail their roles in the Trump administration and track where they are now. They will be held accountable." Ugh. It always sounded a little more like MS-13 than a political operation. Now, because everything is irony, there are reports tonight that the FBI is investigating the Lincoln Project, specifically one of its founders, a man called John Weaver. Weaver, you may remember, because he helped manage John McCain's run for president. He also worked for former Ohio Governor John Kasich. He is a close associate of Bill Kristol's. Of course he is. But in his spare time, John Weaver spent enormous energy trying to lure young boys into sex. At least one of those boys was 14 years old. 21 of John Weaver's alleged victims now accuse him of sexual harassment. It's an awful story. But here's the worst part of that story. The Lincoln Project clearly had a pretty good idea what John Weaver was up to. A lot of people did. For decades, political consultants whispered rumors that John Weaver had tried to molest little boys. Karl Rove, to his credit, once said that out loud. He was promptly attacked for saying it by The Atlantic magazine. The Atlantic protected John Weaver, too. But it turned out to be, apparently, accurate. Weaver's colleagues at the Lincoln Project knew this, but they hid the truth from the public and from law enforcement. Inside the organization, they made it clear they understood what was happening. We're not guessing at this. Here's an excerpt from a new piece in New York Magazine. Quote, "Beginning in September, much of the Lincoln Project staff convened in Park City, Utah, where they hunkered down in a COVID-safe pod until Election Day." Can't make this up. By this time, the quote continues, the allegations against Weaver were an open secret in the company, according to former employees. One former employee said that's when his boss warned him to avoid Weaver. Quote, "When I was told, it was almost in passing that I did not want to be involved with Weaver specifically because I am a young man," the former employee said. One night over drinks with much of the staff, 4 employees recall, Weaver's behavior came up repeatedly as a topic of discussion. One person remembers Steve Schmidt and co-founder Rick Wilson telling people Weaver was, quote, "depraved" and, quote, "twisted," and that they wouldn't want to know the truth about him, end quote. So in other words, inside the office, Lincoln Project executives essentially joked about John Weaver soliciting sex from teenagers. And as if the story couldn't get creepier or more repulsive, we also learned this week that John Weaver once operated a children's boutique, literally. So the question is, why are we learning all of this now? Well, because the election is over. Donald Trump lost. So reporters no longer have political motive to protect John Weaver. Until November, the media had every incentive to promote him as a man of principle, which they assiduously did. Here's John Weaver on 60 Minutes.
John Weaver feels it's the party that's betrayed him.
I mean, look, Leslie, we've gone from caring about character, rule of law, defending the Constitution, a cogent national security policy, free trade. Where are all those issues? Imagine if you travel the country for 30 years fighting for Republican principles and you learn it was all a lie.
Oh, so it's John Weaver who was betrayed. It's really about character. Really, it's about principle. The Lincoln Project cared about democracy. That's why they did what they did. It didn't have anything to do with the money they got. Nothing at all to do with money. They'd do it for free. They promised they would. This subject came up a lot, and every time it did, Lincoln Project of money, and that should have told you something. Here's Lincoln Project executive Rick Wilson.
And I'm going to quote, "They're failed strategists who are doing this for the money."
The easiest way in the world for a Republican strategist to make money right now is to shut up and say nice things about Donald Trump. So clearly we're in the wrong line of work.
Clearly, we're on the wrong line of work. It's all pretty funny. Of course, that's the opposite of the truth. It always is. Rick Wilson found the only line of work that would have him, and apparently not a moment too soon. Published reports show that Wilson faced liens for hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid federal taxes. Oh, speaking of character, American Express took him to court for not paying his credit card bills to the tune of over $25,000. So for a guy like that, the Lincoln Project was a godsend, and we can't overstate that. According to the Associated Press, quote, of the $90 million raised by the Lincoln Project, more than half, $50 million, went to firms controlled by the Lincoln Project's executives. $50 million. According to the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, in the month of December alone, that was before the Georgia Senate runoff, the Lincoln Project shoveled $1.5 million to Steve Schmidt, who incidentally bought a big new house, according to news reports. The Lincoln Project spent $38,000 on a private jet company. They spent $1.7 million with project co-founder Mike Madrid's firm, and they gave $420,000 to co-founder Reed Galen's firm. Hope these guys saved the money, because it's hard to imagine we'll be hearing much from the Lincoln Project after today. Axios reported that Steve Schmidt has just resigned from the Lincoln Project. He wrote a resignation letter that's online tonight that you should read. In it, he portrays himself as the victim. It's all about him. And then says he's resigning because the board of the Lincoln Project has too many middle-aged white men. And in the name of diversity, he must go. By the way, the Lincoln Project also saw today the resignation of its spokesman and a couple of other people. Keep in mind, just a week ago, the Lincoln Project was powerful and feared. And now it's done. It's over. It's not coming back. The lesson is things change fast. Ask Andrew Cuomo how fast they change. A lot of people expected Andrew Cuomo to be Joe Biden's attorney general, maybe the vice president of the United States, and for good reason. Cuomo played an instrumental role in Biden's campaign for the White House. Cuomo helped the uniparty leverage coronavirus for political ends. He's one of the reasons that a lot of voters in November wound up believing that Donald Trump was personally responsible for COVID. Joe Biden knew that these propaganda points were helping him, and he seemed grateful for Andrew Cuomo's help.
Your governor of New York's done one hell of a job. I think he's sort of the gold standard.